Hello, everyone. Welcome to another awesome virtual artist gallery tour and artist talk and Q&A session sponsored by the Southwest Minnesota Arts Council. We are so honored to have Andrew and Katie Webster as our highlighted artists for 2 months. Their in-person reception at our gallery in Southwest Minnesota. Our gallery is in Marshall, Minnesota. They opened their exhibit on July 18th, and their exhibit will be in downtown Marshall, as I said, at our gallery, which is located at 509 West Main Street in Marshall. That will be open until August 30th. Our regular office hours are Monday through Friday. And so stop by, take a look at Andrew and Katie's work. We welcome everyone that joined us now, and we are recording this video and we'll post it on our website for future people to watch and enjoy and learn about Andrew and Katie's work. Andrew received 2 grants from the Southwest Minnesota Arts Council in 2023, a Quick Support for Artists grant and an Artist Growth grant. Those grants went toward preparing a site and constructing a wood and soda-fired kiln for his home studio. Let me tell you just a little bit about Webster Pottery, which is Katie and Andrew Webster. Together, the Websters make finely crafted utilitarian pottery decorated with archetypal imagery inspired by the natural world. Their process of creating pottery is collaborative from start to finish, allowing Katie and Andrew to bring their unique strengths and perspectives to the finished work. Notably, Andrew's background in art history and Katie's in marriage and family therapy. The surfaces are achieved using raw clay, paper resist, slips, stains, glazes, and overglazes. The variety of techniques used allows the decoration and imagery to build intuitively and in multiple layers. The finished work portrays a synthesis of the Webster's craftsmanship, creativity, metaphor, and individual experiences. Webster Pottery is fabricated from stoneware and fired with wood and soda, giving each piece depth, quality, and individuality. That was like a quick deep dive. And what I forgot to say is, hello, I'm Nicole DeBoer. I'm the director at the Southwest Minnesota Arts Council. On this call, we have Andrew joining us. We also have Crystal Lawaji, who is my partner in doing good work in the arts at the Arts Council. Crystal has created a video that we are going to watch just here in a little bit. And the video that she has created is a tour of the artwork that is already being exhibited in the SMAC Gallery. So you're going to, just like we have published, you're going to take a virtual tour of what we have. Andrew and Katie are prolific in their making of work. So there are a lot of pieces in the exhibit right now. And I think that's only a very small portion of what they have and are showing and sharing with the public through festivals and fairs and whatnot over the summer. I'm sure that when we give Andrew a moment to talk about what's going on in their lives, he can share where their work is or will be in the near future. I see we have additional people joining, and you're in the right place. We're glad you're here. We are talking with Andrew Webster about Webster Pottery. And we are getting ready to kick off a video. And maybe Crystal, are we good to go on that here in a minute?
Yep, I can start whenever.
Okay, so and I was just going to say the next step is we're going to watch this video. We'll come back, let Andrew say hello and share a little bit about his work. Maybe Katie's going to join us tonight. We'll see. I know Andrew's on his phone so that he might be able to give you a tour of the kiln that they built outside. And then we will take questions from the audience members. I know Crystal and I generally have a few questions in our back pocket because we get to live with this beautiful artwork every day at work. And so there are always questions that come up when you get to really spend a lot of time with art. Go ahead, Crystal, take it away. Thanks. back. Thank you for that, Crystal. As you can tell, there is a lot of work being exhibited in this gallery show. And as you can imagine, also with pottery, it's one thing to see it in a photo, but another thing to see it in person. And to even hold it and feel the weight of it and how comfortable it sits in your hand, especially those mugs. Fall is just around the corner. If today was any indication, hot coffee in one of those mugs would be a really lovely thing to treat yourself to. So you may have caught at the very end of the video is that SMAC is really, our entire mission is to support artists and arts organizations and just anything to do with art across the 18 counties of southwestern Minnesota. And so because of that, we open our gallery only to people who have received a grant from us. So we happily invited Andrew and Katie to exhibit their work because they're prior grantees, and we also do not take a commission. So if you're interested in any of the pieces on there, or you want to come and explore and take a look at things in person, we're in Marshall, 509 West Main Street. Come and take a look until the end of August. I'm going to hand it over to Andrew so he can tell you a little bit about their work, about Webster Pottery as a studio, how it functions, some of his highlights, and maybe where he's going to be showing next. So Andrew, take it away.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having us, for supporting us. This has been a long journey for Katie and I to get to this point, and nobody does it alone. And SMAC has certainly been such a blessing for us. So we are so excited to be a part of SMAC and to support you guys in whatever way we can too. And really appreciate you having us and showing our work at the gallery. And thank you, Crystal, for that video too. I haven't seen our work featured like that before, and it was kind of a surreal moment. It was like, wow, this is really nice. So thank you for that too. So as Nicole mentioned when she read our biography and our statement, Webster Pottery is my wife and I, Katie. She is on the property somewhere, but she's with our son, who needs lots of attention and entertainment. But she might be around at some point while I'm talking. But so we make pottery together. We make functional work, and the function of the work is really important to us. So we consider ourselves functional potters. I'm originally from North Carolina. Katie's originally from Minnesota. That's how we ended up in Minnesota. And yeah, we're just really excited to be here. So what I'd like to do is maybe show everyone around. I see that Jill Warner is here. She was one of my students at during the spring class that we offered through the Hutchinson Center for the Arts. So some of this might be familiar to Jill, but she was a great student of ours. Yeah, so I'll show you around a little bit. Right now, Katie and I I'm sitting in our showroom. It is part of our studio. It's attached to the studio. And typically this is our gallery area. And typically we have all of the pots displayed. But because it's festival and show season, everything is packed up. So I'm going to turn the screen around here, um, and you can see our space here. We have our desk and a nice heater here, but normally we've got all of our shelves stacked up along the wall, and displayed in this really nice in this nice space. And we do open it up to people that want to come by. It is a kind of an appointment only situation. So reach out to us if you're interested in stopping by, and we'll work something out. Yeah, and so I'm going to get up here and kind of continue into what is our extremely messy studio, but I don't think that we would have it any other way. Um, so you can see some of our backstock here, and our studio space. And here's our sink, and it has a full bathroom. So we're really lucky that, it kind of has its own bathroom, its own water heater, and things like that. Katie and I actually just got back to work making some pots, and so we did mugs this week. And what you're seeing here is a commission of about 9 mugs for a stockyard in Mississippi. And one of our close family friends, this is her family, and they're celebrating their centennial this year, 100 years. It's called Tadlock Stockyards. And so Katie and I just got finished making these pieces. We also have some other mugs that we created this week. So you can kind of see at this stage kind of what the pots look like early on. So right now they're just drying out on the racks here until we'll get them fired. You can see most of our work uses this paper resist silhouette cutout type of technique. And then we also use stamps as well to create texture. But I'll walk over here to the big messy table. And I know it looks a bit chaotic, but it reveals a lot of clues about our process. So you can see here that we do kind of make the handles of our mugs separately to attach them. We don't pull them off of the mug like some potters choose to do. And then all around you can probably see the paper resist. And these are just hand-drawn shapes that are cut out of paper using a stencil cutter, a portrait cutter over here on our desk. So you can actually see some of the decals here that we've cut out before. And they come out in their paper. And what we do is we take the stencils and we put them in water. And what happens is the paper gets nice and soft and wet. And what it'll do, if I can use this finished pot as an example, what it'll do is it sticks on wet clay. And so we'll stick some paper on there. And what's cool is we'll just grab shapes and grab stuff, and kind of collage the surface and build it organically. So I got a big cone flower, and then you could stick, a deer or something like that on it. And then we'll paint a slip. We'll paint a white slip over the surface of a darker clay. And then after it dries, we'll take and we'll peel the paper off. And the result is what you see up here. So that's how we can, work with and collage the surfaces. And this is our light clay bodies. So this is kind of a white on white type of decoration, whereas these stockyard mugs are the white slip over a dark kind of red clay body. So when you peel that paper off, it leaves the stencil. And so, after we add stencils, sometimes I'll come through and I'll add, little details, grasses, this dotted line that goes around the mug. That's all kind of additional embellishment and decoration. And so you can see, just a nice variety of work. This piece in particular has a green slip, and then is mostly texture. It doesn't use the stencils like you might see here. And so recently, I've been much more interested in exploring texture in the pieces. So a lot of the pieces that are currently at SMAC have that feature, or they have a lot of texture in them, which is something like I just said, something that I've been interested in exploring. You kind of see behind me, this is the front end of the studio that leads kind of out into the front. This is our yard. So we have a really nice spot here for our studio. But the real prize is what's out back. And so I'd like to show everyone the kiln that we built in large part due to the funding from SMAC, the help that we got from SMAC. So we just actually fired the kiln. And so this is a good example of kind of what the stack would look like. When we unloaded recently, we were in a rush. We were unloading the night before the Minnesota Pottery Festival here in Hutchinson. And so the shelves got left up. But you can see all the little wads and things like that. We just pulled the pot straight out. And so that's kind of what the stack inside of the kiln looks like. I think to start out, I got, as Nicole mentioned, I got 2 grants. The first grant was quick support, and that allowed me to go ahead and pour the foundation of the kiln. I had never done anything like this before, so I was kind of learning and going really methodically and slowly. And so, obviously the first thing I needed to do was, where are we going to put the kiln, and what are we going to put it on? So I wanted to go ahead and get the foundation poured, and so I wrote a quick support grant, and the quick support, as well as the larger artist growth grant, they were very similar. and very related because they all tied into to the construction of this kiln. So once I got the foundation poured, then I needed to amass a lot of bricks and a lot of materials. And so the artist growth grant that I wrote was to basically help me offset the costs of all of these materials. The materials in the kiln consist of kind of two types of brick. There's a hard brick and a soft brick. And each one of these bricks is probably anywhere between $4 and $7 a piece. So you can imagine if there's, you know, 2,000 bricks in a kiln, you're looking at, close to $15,000 to $20,000 just in materials alone. So it's really hard to for artists to get to this point where they can build and have their own kiln. And I can't imagine, anyone really being able to do it without some kind of, support from, your local or regional art councils. And I know Minnesota in particular funds the arts almost better than anyone in the country. We're really lucky to be in this state and have the support that we do. So I used that money, long story short, to build this kiln. And part of the grant was and part of the goal of this kiln was to share it with people and offer a community class. And so, as I mentioned before, we offered a course for 4 students in May of this year. One of our guests here, Jill, was a student in that class. We had 4 great students, and the class went for, I believe, 4 Saturdays, and then culminated in a firing of the kiln, which happened to turn out to be our best firing we've ever had. And in terms of the results that we had out of the kiln, it was simply an amazing outcome for the kiln, and I think all the students produced beautiful work as well. I think what maybe I'd like to do is talk just a little bit about the wood and soda process, because that's very unique to our work, and it contributes so much to the surface of our work. A lot of it is left up to chance. So every single piece is completely unique. I can make those Tadlock Stockyard mugs, and they're all identical. But once I put them into the kiln, the surfaces will end up, doing their own unpredictable thing. And so we like to fire with wood. As you can, let me turn it around here. This is the remnants of my wood pile from the last firing. You can see I have another bundle here, but there's really 2 reasons why we decide to use wood in our firing. It's cheap. It's the cheapest fuel out there. And it also contributes to the surface effects of the work. So, for an example, when you fire a kiln with gas, like the type of gas you would heat your home with, natural gas or even propane, it's a very clean burning fuel. So there's not a lot of smoke or byproduct that comes off of burning natural gas or propane. And so that's why you don't get a whole lot of ash and different kind of buildup on the surfaces of the pottery like you do with wood. Wood creates a lot of smoke, a lot of soot, a lot of black, right? You can see it's all over the kiln, like this fine powder, this soot. It's all the carbon and byproduct of the wood that collects onto the pottery as we fire it. And you can kind of see if I switch it around again. This is the firebox. So you can see that's where all the wood goes when we're firing. So all of that ash that you see there goes up into the kiln and collects on all of the pottery. And so at the end of the firing, when everything gets super hot and starts to melt, whatever has accumulated on the pots will start to mix and melt with the glazes or with the soda that we spray into the kiln. And based on the mineral makeup of whatever is in that ash, it changes colors. It also changes color based on temperature. The path of a flame created by wood is inconsistent. And so parts of the pot will get more hot than other parts of the pot. And those very subtle differences in temperature also create different colors as well. So that's why it's so unpredictable and unique, because it just depends on nature, right? Which is kind of cool, we think. Towards the end of the firing, we spray a mixture of water and baking soda, just like you would find in your kitchen pantry. It's sodium bicarbonate. And you mix that with water. And when the kiln is at its peak temperatures, so we're talking 2,250 degrees. When it's just about at its peak temperature, we'll spray that water and baking soda mixture into the kiln through these ports. And you can see these ports on the side of the kiln. There's one for the front and one for the back and for the bottom and for the top. So we'll spray about 2 gallons of this water baking soda mixture into the kiln. And what happens is a bunch of chemistry stuff that I couldn't begin to explain to anyone, but my understanding of it, my potter's understanding of it, is that the sodium bicarbonate vitrifies, gets into the atmosphere of the kiln, and it binds, when it's superheated, it binds to the silica that is naturally present in all clay pots. And silica is the main ingredient in glass. And so what happens is the sodium bicarbonate acts as a flux. It attaches to the silica particles that are in the clay, and it melts them, essentially. It turns them into a glaze. And so what you're literally doing by spraying sodium bicarbonate and water into the kiln, you're creating a vapor glaze that circulates in the kiln. And so that's how each piece, even though not every piece is fully glazed on all of the surfaces, you still get a fine glazed finish on all of the pieces, just because it's soaking in that vapor glaze as you're spraying it into the kiln. It also interacts with the ash and the other soot, carbon, mineral buildup from the wood as well. So all of that kind of just comes together and mixes and does its thing, um, and and you live with the results. Um, and sometimes the results are awful and disappointing. And a lot of times pots can be destroyed in this process. It's a very violent way of firing a kiln. And so, as you can imagine, there's a lot of manual labor involved. And so, um, I think that that's why you don't see a lot of potters choosing to go this route, because it's hard. Um, and But the results, if you can tune it in and fire correctly and do your best and learn from the kiln, the results that you can get out of the kiln can be just really awe-inspiring. Because you can only do so much as an artist before you put it into the kiln, and the kiln just takes it away and is going to do what it's going to do. And we really like that philosophy of kind of letting go of the piece, of allowing it to become whatever it's meant to become. Whether that ends up in a shard pile or it ends up being, one of the most beautiful pieces we've ever, created, and everything in between. Um, so our process is really unique, um, and um, and really rewarding when those pieces do come out. Yeah, and again, you know, being able to achieve something like building this kiln is a huge, huge step for Katie and I in terms of our careers as artists. And it's we haven't even had it for a full year yet. I finished kiln in August of 2023. And so we haven't even we're barely coming up on a year that we've had the kiln, and it's already had a huge impact on, the amount of work that we've been able to produce, and thus the number of shows and festivals that we can attend, offering classes, sharing the work. I mean, it's really expanded our capabilities and, our achievements. So we're super thankful for that. Maybe I'll talk really quick. I know I'm talking a lot, but I'll talk real quick just about how the kiln functions. So you see the two fire boxes below, and then you see those iron grates. Those iron grates go all the way to the very back of the kiln, and they go underneath the floor of the kiln. And the floor of the kiln is what the stack sits on top of. And you can see there's a channel that's not connected to either firebox, right? There's a channel that goes all the way to the back. See if I can get you a good picture. All the way back to the chimney. And so what happens is you put the wood in the front, it burns, and the flames come out of the back here. And the flames shoot up this back wall here, and they hit the arch. They come forward through all the pottery, and then they get sucked downwards into this opening here, which is called the flue. And you can see the flue is, I don't know, this is probably 12 inches by 12 inches. It's like a square, and it's got a little bit more of an opening in the back there. So it all gets sucked through the flue and then out the chimney. So it creates this kind of cycling effect, and it's called a downdraft kiln. And so the flames, they come forward through the stack and then down into the flue. And we can control the drafting and the temperature using a damper. I have the damper out right now, but the damper slides in and out. And then we can also open different types of ports and things like that to allow different amounts of airflow into the kiln. This is the door of the kiln here. And you can see this shiny finish on the surface of the bricks. This is the same process that's happening on the pots. So you can see the bricks originally kind of look like this yellowish color. They kind of look like that. But after they've been fired and they get that soda on them, the same thing happens to them. It happens to the pots. And so it collects the soda on the surface. You can see how shiny it is, and it creates that glazed effect. You can also see that all over the walls on the inside here. So it's kind of cool because the inside of your kiln becomes, completely glazed and beautiful, just like the pots themselves. I think I can open it up to maybe some questions. If anybody has any about the process or what we do. I know a lot. Jill probably knows a lot of that already, but I'd love to answer some questions if you got any.
I have a million, but I see Jill is coming on camera and maybe wants to ask.
No, I'm just thanks for the further explanation of the kiln. I really appreciated that. So
Yeah, absolutely. It's good seeing you.
yeah, you too.
That's great. So one of my questions was going to be, Andrew, what's your favorite tool so after you have your clay body formed, using the slip or doing the textured embellishments?
Are you
what's
asking
your
what
tool?
my favorite tool or my favorite like decorative technique?
You can answer either one.
I definitely think that in terms of the decorative technique, both Katie and I really love the paper resist. The designs are hand drawn. Let me show you an example because we actually just made some new ones. So you can see these designs are hand drawn based off of plants in our own garden. So like what we were doing, here's a flattened one. You can take something like that and trace it, and then outline it. And then we scan those into the computer. And we used to cut these out by hand. So you can imagine how incredibly long and frustrating it was. We used to cut them out by hand, but now we just scan them into the computer. We draw them one time, and then we can cut as many out as we want. There's some cone flowers. And then you can see, so here's the original drawing. And then, here is the silhouette cutout, that results from it. And so we can hand draw these designs and then the process is very collage-like, and I think that allows the surfaces to evolve very organically and individualistically. And so you can see some of these new decals or these new stencils. They go from drawing to cutout to, paper resist. So that's, I think it's motherwort. And then our cone flowers are going pretty crazy right now. They're like 9 feet tall. And so we try to draw our inspiration from our yard around us. And there's plenty of inspiration if you know kind of where to look. So we have stencils from our flocks. We'll take pictures. You can see some of the yellow cone flowers that we'll do. The motherwort, we've got sunflower, things like that. So we try to draw, that inspiration from around us. And so I think the paper is very intuitive and creative. So I would say we really like that. In terms of a tool, that is a really, really hard question to answer because there is a tool for everything in pottery. And each of them have, a particular use. I think there's two that come to
You just cut out your voice, or maybe it's muffled. Try again, Andrew.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, it's probably my pinky. Sometimes my pinky will drift over the microphone. But I have two in mind that are just the best tools to have. And let me flip the camera. The first one is this right here. All it is a nice stiff wire cutter. And I can't tell you how much I love this tool and how often I use it. You wouldn't think that you would use something like that too much, but I find applications for this tool all over the place. So like if you're trying to cut a handle, in order for it to fit right, you have to cut the handle at particular angles so that it fits on the pot a certain way. And this tool just, you can set that angle and it just goes, right through it when it's not dry, or doing it one-handed, but you can kind of see it gives it a really nice sharp cut. So that's one tool. My other favorite tool is this guy right here. This is my banding wheel. And all it is, it's on a bearing and it spins. And so it's almost like having like a tabletop wheel. And the fact that it's heavy is really heavy and it spins for so long and it's on those ball bearings, it's just, I don't know if I could live without that. And I don't want to think about possibly living without that tool. There's other ones, but in terms of the ones I think of, it would be that banding wheel and that wire cutter. Can you tell that I like talking about our work in our studio?
It has been very interesting though. Like I didn't want to be the stupid person that asked how you use like the soda with the pottery, but I didn't know. So it's nice to know that kind of stuff because I didn't know why people used it or how it was different than other kilns, you know.
Well, I've been developing my skills at kind of, I don't know, trying to explain our whole very complicated process to, kind of as quickly as I can without being too technical. And to make it more accessible. And I've been getting a lot of practice at festivals. Because there's been an incredible amount of interest in our work. And so I feel like I've gotten better at being able to explain it, as best as I can.
I'm curious, do you know like what the life expectancy is of that kiln? Like how fast it
Hmm.
breaks down or how long you can use it?
That's a great question, and that is absolutely something that you have to think about and that you have to consider. The soda is very corrosive, and is very hard on the shelves and the bricks on the inside. Um, my design of the kiln, the first one that I ever built was not mine, this kiln design, but it had the soft bricks on the inside rather than the hard bricks. The hard bricks are the ones that kind of turn that glazed surface. Um, and the soda is so destructive that those soft bricks are very brittle, and I would say that kiln probably, got maybe 7 years of firing it, maybe 4 times a year, 3 times a year. So anywhere between like 20 and 30 firings. And it's in very rough shape now. Very rough shape. I decided to line the chamber with hard, because I'm like, if I'm going to spend all this money, if I'm going to write these grants, if I'm going to um, build it myself by myself, like I'm going to do it to where I don't want to do it again for a long time. Um, because in order to, replace things, you kind of have to deconstruct the whole kiln. It's almost like getting a new kiln. This kiln, um, I believe that I could probably get 40 or 50 firings out of it, before I might start to think about doing something. The arch of the kiln, the arch that goes over the top, is made of soft brick. It's made of really heavy duty soft brick, like really nice ones, um, that are more durable than like the other ones that you might have seen on the outside. Um, but those will wear out before the rest of the chamber. Like the hard brick chamber could feasibly last my lifetime, you know, if not beyond, because it's just going to keep accumulating layers, and it kind of seals itself. And eventually, if it gets enough soda build up on the inside, you don't even have to spray that much soda. It'll leach the soda out of the kiln itself, like a seasoned cast iron crock pot, which is really cool. But I imagine that that the arch is what I'm going to eventually have to replace. How many firings I get from this type of fire brick, I'm guessing should be quite a lot because they're the top end, most durable soft bricks. So I would say at least like 30 firings. And so if we're firing it, 5 times a year, maybe that's 6 years. Sometime around then. But it certainly pays for itself. Um, in terms of the investment. But feasibly, I guess to answer your question more directly, the kiln could last our entire career. At least the main structure of the kiln and not the arch, which is a big deal. The issue becomes if we ever move. Because when those bricks start to melt and accumulate, they melt together, right? So if we ever moved, like we could do it now and we probably wouldn't destroy the bricks too bad, but after a certain amount of time, there'd be no way to deconstruct the kiln without destroying it. It's just too much accumulation. They're too fused together. But that's the chamber. We could, salvage the chimney. We could take down anytime. It'll have a little bit of buildup on it over the years, but not anything like the chamber.
So you must have moved on to a property. If there was a kiln already there that you didn't build, you moved on to a property of a potter? Or
What's the question?
You were lucky enough to move onto a property that already had a kiln?
No.
Or no? Oh, you said the soft kiln, the kiln that had soft brick on the inside.
Yes,
You said you didn't build that. I was just assuming that was on the property already.
No. Yeah, so the kiln that I have that I showed you is the second one that I have built. The first one that I built was not mine. It was a friend of mine. And I helped her build that kiln, and that's the kiln that Katie and I fired our work in for about 5 years. She told me that if I helped her build the kiln, then she would let me fire with her. And it being a wood soda kiln, we jumped at the opportunity. Like I wanted the experience of, what does a kiln build look like, and then being able to fire in such a unique way, was something that we really wanted. But it's the same exact design. And so, I laid the foundation for the other one. I didn't do the arch. I didn't do the chimney or the chamber. I did kind of more the lower firebox area of that kiln. But that one was in Sartell, Minnesota. And we fired that kiln for the most part while we lived in St. Cloud. We moved to Hutchinson, which is an hour south of St. Cloud, at the end of 2021. And we moved to this property because it had the space that we needed in order to build our own kiln, because that's what we really wanted. And so obviously moving here really kind of kick-started the urgency of needing to construct our own kiln, because I was driving an hour and 20 minutes with two little kids, driving all the pots up there and trying to fire up there and prep the kiln, load the kiln, and do all of that work up there. And so that's how I chose this design. The more and more I thought about what design of kiln I wanted to build, I was just like, well, you've already done one of these kilns and you know how to fire it, and it's about the size you like and it's the results you want. So why am I overthinking this? Just build the same kiln. So that's how I kind of settled on this design.
Well, I have learned a ton. I know that in my dreams, I will try to figure out a way that I can be around when you're firing. I would love that experience. I think that's maybe a once in a lifetime experience for non-potters.
Mhm.
Yeah. So we appreciate it. I'd be happy to keep us rolling here with any other questions. Otherwise,
This
we just
the
thank you.
second weekend in October. Put that on your
Okay.
calendar.
Okay. Is it
Mm.
on our Southwest Arts Council calendar you're saying, or it's on your calendar? It's on your calendar.
It's on my personal calendar.
There you go. There you
I
go.
think it's like we have it planned right now for the weekend of the 12th and 13th of October, one of those 2 days. It's a Saturday, Sunday. It's open to the public. So we tell our friends it's a bit of a party. It's like we have a potluck. The students came over for the firing, the neighbors come over, the friends come over. It's a good time. It's an event. So you're more than welcome to come.
That's wonderful. That is great. Well, we wish you the best in that firing. How many pots approximately will you be firing? How many pieces?
Well, it depends on the type of work you put in, obviously, but this one will be a full one. So my guess is probably around 200.
Wow. Yeah,
Around 200 pots.
amazing.
Yeah.
I'm a painter, and so to fathom that I could have 200 pieces of work finished, like to wrap them
Yeah.
all up within a weekend, not start to finish, I get that, but
Right.
to have the accomplishment, the feeling of accomplishment that you have 200 pieces finished
Yeah.
when the fire goes out and everything
Yeah.
cools off, that must be like, wow, your heart
Yeah.
just pounds
Well,
for that.
it takes about 13 to 14 hours to fire. So
Mhm.
the week leading up to and loading the kiln is crazy. It was super busy, and then you culminate in this 14-hour grueling long haul where you're loading wood into this kiln and making this massive fire for 14 hours. And by the end of it, you're like, I am so dirty and exhausted, but closing that what you're talking about, that feeling of accomplishment of like, okay, I've done everything that I can. I made the piece, I decorated it, fired it, wadded, loaded it, glazed it, fired it, and everything's closed up now, and it's out of my hands. It's done. The work is the work, and we'll see what we get in a couple of days. It's like Christmas morning.
Yeah,
Whenever we bust open the kiln. Um, yeah.
I am sure. I am
It's either
sure.
a dream or sometimes it can be a nightmare. I've seen horror pictures or heard horror stories where you might have a brick that gives way and the whole stack comes down, and you lose everything, and then everything fuses together. And you just have this big mass of glass and pottery and brick, and it's a big mess.
Mm. Yeah, does sound like a horror story.
Yeah.
Well, we are so grateful that you gave us so much time and explanation and walked us through the process. I just can't thank you enough. I hope that our guests who are on the call enjoyed your time. And I hope all of those who will be watching this after the fact, it will be on the Southwest Minnesota Arts Council website. That website is swmnarts.org. If you want to check that out, we do have a page up right now that's talking about Webster Pottery and has the bios and some pictures of Andrew and Katie's work. So you can check it out there. And then in a few days, the video will be up and live and ready to rewatch. And you can always scan ahead and get some relook at some of those finite details that Andrew shared. So
Yeah, the virtual tour video will go up in 15 minutes. It'll be on YouTube, actually. It's just scheduled to go up. So that'll be on YouTube and that'll go on our website. And then, I don't know, in a week's time or so, we'll have this video posted as well. So we'll have the two different ones. And Andrew, for your purposes, that video, you can use it for whatever you want. You'll be able to use the YouTube link to show some of your work through that way whenever you want. That'll stay up. So
Sure. Well, again, thank you for putting that together. We really appreciate that.
Yeah, it's a lot of people do watch them that can't get into the studio art to the gallery, and then it inspires people to get in and see it live too, I think, when they see the video. So
yeah. Well, I'm going to say goodnight and thanks again, and wishing you the very best in all of your future endeavors.
Thank you. Can I maybe steal your ear for a couple of minutes after we end the meeting?
Yep, you sure can. I am going to stop recording. Thanks all. Take care. Bye.